nice things about this show and the format we do with like having the music on the call and talking over the music. Breaks are good. It's actually, we talk too much, and I wish it's fine, like the conversation's flowing, but like part of me wishes we talked less and had more. I like the back and forth, and I like when there's no talking for 30 seconds or 60 seconds and the music can just come forward.
For sure. Yep.
So it's, if you just need to hit mute and jump up and take care of something, just do it. That's totally fine. And not, it could actually be a good thing for the show. I'm not encouraging an emergency, but
right.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to talk about in particular in terms of your own? I mean, I have at least one open-ended question I want to ask you.
Sure. Well, that's great. I mean, I have no agenda. I'm sort of enjoying not having one. So
sure.
Yeah.
We'll go with that then.
Yep.
That's completely cool.
Yep. Anyways, like I finally got my like main listening battle station set up just this afternoon. I mean, I had my vinyl hooked up and I had my CD player hooked up, but like my actual computer has not been set up. And I mean, it's just a Mac Mini, but its main focus is internet and finding new music and playing new music. So
that's rad. Okay, now I understand. Yes, I'm so glad that Fight Songs sounds good on your Death Star.
Yes.
Because that was, I really cared about that sounding right and vintage and good loud and dynamic and all that stuff. So,
and it's weird because I didn't really like it's like pieced together over time. Like I got the receiver from my dad, I got the speakers from my dad, and then the only thing I bought was like one set of speakers at one point in time. But it's a pretty good system. I just bought some fancy speaker wire, but it was like I needed a new room for these to come together. So
yeah,
pretty pumped about it.
I'm gonna find an intro somewhere in there. But Scott, are you doing any? Are you getting into any immersive audio type stuff with the multi-speaker setups and the new format?
Well, I mean, that's the hope. Now that I can find new stuff,
have space for it
easily. Yep. So,
pardon me. Sweet. Listeners, welcome to the Long Play Listening Party. I'm Howie Howard, joined by co-host Nate Holt and special guest Scott Morris. We're listening to the back half of my Night Mode project, selections from Continuing Worlds. I'm going to get a track started here right now. Here we go. Nate, this is the one that was sequenced off the Micron. And I used the sequencer on the Micron specifically because it has a really cool feature that lets you delete pieces of the sequence in real time. So like you can do almost a kind of disintegration loop, decay, pulling notes out without changing the timing. And that's what I made use of on this. But we don't, we can talk about it or not, or we can go back to Scott's Death Star.
I was muted. I want to say maybe the Hydrogen Synth, maybe the Micro Freak might do the same thing.
The sequencers on those?
Yeah, I'll have to read up on both of those.
Awesome.
I'm thinking it's probably the Micro Freak that does that because it's a really, I mean, it's for the cost. It's got 9 different types of synthesis, vocoder that sounds really good, and it doesn't have the traditional keyboard. It has that sort of it's like kind of touch sensitive.
Yeah, the touch plate.
I can't forget what it's called. Yeah, the touch plate. Yeah. It's really neat.
Yeah, I'm on the lookout for one of those. And they just released a big update, and I haven't watched the videos about the update, but there's 2 new models even added, and big software update for the Micro Freak.
Yeah, some stuff out there really offers you a lot of stuff for a very, very good price still. I mean, everything's more expensive, but I mean, if you look at, I don't know, I thought it was amazing that how much stuff it did for just being like basically an entry level, price point.
Yeah.
High entry level, but it's.
No, but I mean, super affordable for what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna one of these days there'll be the right price on one, and I think I'll get one. And I think it would be so useful for the sample-based stuff too, for just making little sounds. And I mean, that's kind of how I use the Medusa, but all the Medusa's still fairly traditional at heart, and all the different sonic possibilities of the Microfreak seem really cool.
I mean, and I saved the patch, I'm pretty sure, but there's something I'm missing. So I released a song called Offline, and it's basically a vocoded. I'm singing, but there's some just like, because it was sequenced, and then there are some just tweaks to the sequence, like some of the melody and stuff, which is it was so awesome. And I think I'm almost there. But yeah, it's one of those things, like we were talking earlier. If you said you just recorded your best take straight through, which is kind of how I record a lot of stuff, but like I can record the Microfreak for however long and find like these little samples that sound like they're don't sound like they're samples.
Mm-hmm.
Or just these 2 or 4 bar little phrases and use them as samples, but it sounds just like it's an intentional part. It's just really cool how the sound sort of evolves, and you can get a lot of different flavors and just out of one take.
Absolutely. And so now I have questions for both of you guys, but I'm going to start with Nate since we're kind of on the topic. So Nate, talk to me about vocoders. You've used vocoders in your live sets and obviously on your recordings, and like, what do you have favorites? Do you use a bunch of different ones, or do you have a go-to, or like, how do you vocode, Nate? You personally, I mean.
So on the live stuff, that was, I think that was like a vocal synth. And I just had, the stuff that hides all the ugly things, like some reverb, delay, stuff like that. The vocoder stuff that I've done on the records has usually been, like, I use the Microfreak a lot, but before then, I think, it was I still have it. It's a plugin.
Okay.
I think it's emulator to based off like that. Is it a 330? One of the old school Rolands? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'll look it up. I'm gonna have to look it up because it's gonna drive me nuts. But that's what I had used before, and it was great. I mean, it took a minute to figure out how to kind of route it in the DAW. But once you figured that out, like, it sounded really good. So that's what I've been using, like, that I can recall, is the Microfreak recently, as of late, and then before that, I want to say VP330. I know it's not that. I'm gonna search for it here in just a second.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I have not done much vocoding. I did do a little bit on. So I've been working on a record with Daniel from Lovecraft and Hypermortal and Softcore Syndicate. And I did do a vocoded thing as like the main hook for one of those songs. And I kind of struggled to find one that I thought sounded good. I ended up using one that was built into Reaper.
Okay.
After trying a couple others. And it did the job, but I didn't love the sound of it. So I'm definitely open to vocoder Rex. Scott, do you want to comment on vocoders, or should I ask you my other question?
Well,
I mean, there's always the MS-2000 or the microcorg.
What did we used an Novation when I did a like silly thing in a band concert. Where I had like the biggest kid football boy like do the thing, and like I had another kid play the piano line, so he sounded like a chipmunk, but it was a very big person. So
gotcha.
That was the last time like we yeah, it's like this little, I think it was Novation is, I think it was.
No, I think
it has like a purple color up top. Yeah, I mean, it very much looks like a microcorg, but it was just what the music's.
Yeah, Ultranova 37 key analog synth.
Yep. So I've exhausted my vocoder experience right there, but I did want to kind of encourage you, or like say, hey, I like what you're saying about the samples, kind of providing source material. It reminded me of a process that one of my professors at the University of Iowa, who like amazing musician and like human, did some collaborations with a saxophonist in Brazil, and he would get improvisations from him and then like extract lines and then build compositions based on those like passages. So the compositions were very improv, feeling, but they had like harmonies that like went along to that to make it really a sort of dynamic and erratic and super interesting to listen to. So you're using the same process that the fancy jazz professors are. So it just reminded me of that. Very similar.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
It is the Zils vocoder, XILS vocoder. There's probably I don't know if this one that I'm looking at is, I'm sure it's a newer version, but Zils, it's XILS. And then there's a free, I think the Melda suite of plugins is free, and they include a vocoder. So that's another one to put on the list.
Collaborating with Brazilian Scott reminds me that I have on my list to sample and flip and make a song out of Marcelo's track Vo Izzy.
Yes. He wrote that song for his grandmother.
We'll get permission, of course, or anything, but I really thought I could put a beat behind that and make that into something cool in a sampley kind of way. So that's on the list. I gotta go find the CD. I'm gonna have to do some crate digging in my own basement. I've got several CDs.
If you can't find
I need
one,
to find.
I can probably help you out.
Oh, do you have a few?
Yeah. I don't have very many, but I do have a couple.
You got a couple. Listeners, I guess I should explain. This is a jazz group that Scott played with I don't know, Scott, do you want to say any more? I'll look up, if I can link to it, I will put it in the notes, because it's a really cool Latin jazz.
Yeah,
some interesting composition.
Kind of a combo that we put together in grad school at the University of Iowa, and it was a cool group because it was a lot of Midwest boys playing music of a peer from Brazil who was working on his composition degree in jazz piano, who has since went to the University of Illinois and finished his doctorate there. So,
and Marcelo's a pianist in that group, right?
Yes. Yep. So, yeah, and we had a lot of fun playing gigs. We actually did a radio show where we played a gig at the Mill in Iowa City and played live on the radio, so that was super fun. And other performances in Iowa City and nearby Chicago and stuff like that.
Cool.
Nate, if I can find it online, or I could just send you I think it's something you would really dig.
Yeah, please do. Have you guys? I'm going down this vocoder rabbit hole.
Yeah, if you find any gold, share it by all means.
Well, like I said, man, I think Melda Productions, MELDA, they have a free suite of plugins, and I believe it includes their vocoder, a vocoder, and they're decent plugins. They sound good.
That's a highly recommended plugin suite. I think.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff in it.
Now I'm seeing Arturia has a vocoder in their V Collection 9, which I've been holding off and refusing to upgrade from my V Collection. So I'm convincing myself I don't need these, but now I'm looking and seeing this vocoder, and it's not. I've got my special Arturia upgrade price, but it's still not it's not like it's
not cheap. Yeah.
So we'll see. I think it's trying to chase a bunch of stuff when you have things that you have not even given a chance is probably not advisable. Just work with what you got, with what you have, figure it out, and then if you think you need something more or something, then go and look for it. But
right.
You're just hearing me talk myself out of getting that, upgrading to the V Collection 9.
It's a hard conversation, but a good one. It's a hard one to learn as a musician.
Yes, it is.
But once you learn the lesson, it will save you a lot of money.
Yes.
And you have to you have that conversation many times after that. So
you do. And the thing is, for probably a good 2 or 3 years, I was fairly, I had no desire or no, visiting Sweetwater or somewhere like I was just I don't need to do that. I still don't really
right.
Everything I have, I love to use. There's still more, way more potential and sonic, any whatever that can be done. So
yeah, I use a variety of strategies. I wait a lot. Wait 6 months. Do you still want it? That's a piece of my puzzle. Obviously, I love gear. I love plugins. I love trying stuff. I think to people with a lot of gear, I don't have a lot of gear. To people with not a lot of gear, I have a ton of gear. So it's I'm kind of in a middle ground. But to me, the important thing is always lack of gear should never be an obstacle or a barrier to music making, right? You can make great music with what you have, no matter what that is. At the same time,
never really.
Yeah, totally. The free stuff, just there's an incredible amount available for free. And so missing.
I know for a fact there's people making better music than I am on like an iPad or something. You know what I mean?
Sure. Like, how many artists have we talked to and they work in GarageBand, and have made these records that we've listened to and been like, oh, we have to get this person on the show. They come on and they're like, yeah, I did it in GarageBand, and that doesn't.
And Caitlin Condor's like, oh, I just sang it into my phone.
Yeah, completely.
That's incredible.
So there should never. You can definitely make music with whatever you have. There is a pleasure in like exploring and trying new things and having tools available. So that's cool too. It's sort of both, but like I do see people get wrapped up in, oh, I need this before I can do XYZ. And that's in my mind that's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Like, you should be doing XYZ to the best of your ability while you save up for whatever thing you want.
Yeah.
And that kind of, Scott, I found my way into like the question I've been wanting to ask you, which is just like, I remember having a conversation with you in Iowa City, I think, about, lifelong music making and some specific. That conversation was about some specific curricula you were looking at or working with. And, obviously that's something that we here at the show are very much in favor of and practice. And I know, of course, that's something you're still thinking about and putting into practice with your kids and everything. But I don't know, just open-ended, talk to me about your current thoughts on lifelong music making and how you practice it yourself and how you try to teach your kids to practice it.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there's a lot there. I guess I'll just kind of like, so I did sort of like my thesis on this topic, and while I was passionate about it and exploring it, I was really interested in kind of the way Great Britain was going around it. There's a person or a curriculum by Lucy Green called Musical Futures, and they're still kind of doing their thing in England, where they're teaching kids more like concepts like, all right, we're going to talk about, like, today we're going to do basically a jam, and we're just going to work on building. So like they will practice different ways that they can build during, whether that's like with one chord or a different cycle of chords or whatever. So that was sort of like there's a different approach to than just based on performance based, like concert thing. Because while we do a very good job of like achieving in our sort of American music education, or really just anything, like we practice for the game, we practice for the concerts. Kind of circling back to another thing I was reading at the time, a cool book by a pastor called Infinite versus Finite Games. So just like trying to give kids infinite things to do in their training and not just finite things.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking to my kids a lot right now about. It's like, we just finished a performance season. Now we are entering an off season, and here's what musicians do. Like, musicians listen and practice and perform. Those are the three things that we do. We listen, practice, perform. So we're not performing right now, but we can still listen and practice and explore and like see music differently in the summer than we do the rest of the year, or go to a new event, or try something new for fun out, or click on a link that we normally wouldn't. So I'm trying to give them some like explorative assignments, where they might, through like reference links, like, okay, I found this musician who plays in this orchestra or symphony, and what would I do with them in the city, or what could I ask them about their city, or where would I want to eat in that city that isn't a fast food chain, or, just like different things to make them think about the world and explore the world in a more way because that's our job, is to expose them and give them directions. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on right now with kids as we enter an off season, so that they have those infinite things that they can kind of talk about. So for me, it's weird because after I get done with, a long week or a long school year or whatever it is, like I still end up running to music, but I can do that in a different setting with a gig or recording, and not just like planning the next concert. So
right.
For me, it's kind of a change of setting, or a rekindling or a connection in a different way that like fuels my fire to bring that back. So while I wish I could take a sabbatical as like a public school teacher, that's how I do like mini sabbatical shot in the arm, is like exploring and bringing it back into what I'm doing. So it's not just the same old. So yeah, very open-ended sort of stream of consciousness, combining like current practice to kind of philosophy of where I delved into it initially. I'm finding, a lot of the stuff that I wanted to do 10 years ago, like, is hard to implement. It's like, it's an idea, but when that meets reality, like we still have our structures and our settings and our systems, and trying to make those things work, function within our systems is where the art and the craft really lies. But, finding our way one bit at a time, and hopefully, steer a kid in the right direction here or there. So
yeah, and I love that you're doing it at all, because I mean, we had incredible teachers, incredible examples, but not once in school do I remember anyone really talking to me about making music outside of school, right? Or like making music after graduation, other than, maybe going to college and being in one of the college bands or whatever.
Right.
We got a lot of support from our teachers and our parents and stuff, but like there was never a lesson on what to do. There was never a type of exposure to kind of give any kind of direction or just just like create a jumping off point, right? Like here's what you could do. We're just gonna try this today, and the goal is just to go through this experience and feel what it's like to try and add to a jam,
Right.
And so I think it's really cool that is something you're sprinkling in, or maybe weaving in is a better metaphor. So we've arrived at the last song of selections from Continuing Worlds, and I do want to pause a little bit and let you guys hear just like, I don't know, 30 or 60 seconds of this song, because it's not the last track on the full like 3-hour thing, but it could have been. I love this track. I don't remember making it, but as I've listened and sequenced this whole project, the opening track and this track are the real bookends to me. And
so can I just like add on to what you're talking about? How it's like I felt like I had to pick something that I didn't necessarily care for in order to have something to like go to college for. Whereas, if it was like, if you like music, this is how. I'm grateful for my education. I'm not, you make your decisions, and your life is what it is now. But I just wish that I had that some sort of motivational spark to like just kind of like take a step back and rethink what I really wanted to do, because the answer would have been music. But I was like I was thinking I need to come up with something that makes sense to go to college for, and all this. And if I had just had I think just a brief moment, not necessarily, maybe decided to go second semester as my first semester, just to have that time to really figure out that's what. Anyway, not to get into a long thing, but I mean, it's the teachers and the people that you have behind you when you're, in school, and it's very important, to have that encouragement behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Scott and I would agree with you a 1,000,000%. And like talking about our teachers, which includes Scott's dad, that's like we could do a whole show on the incredible teachers, music teachers specifically, that we were able to interact with, and lucky to be in a classroom with, from elementary school on up. And just, just one tiny thing. And Scott, I don't know if you want to, but just the example. So Scott's dad and one of our band teachers, Mr. Polensky, were in a polka band. And I just remember, who knows where, but I remember seeing a little video of them on like public television playing the polka band. And it was silly and goofy, and we probably teased them, and they had polka outfits and whatever, and there were like bales of hay, or maybe it was the country band. Were they in a country band too?
Yeah.
It was the country band, I guess I'm thinking of. But just even that tiny little example, right? That here were these guys that, we saw in class every day, but they had this other life, and they made music outside of the classroom. I think was such obviously it's stuck in my mind all these years. I don't remember the song or anything, but I remember the visual of them playing the country band on public television, and how, at some level, how cool that was, even as we joked about it,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just, in a phrase, more is caught than taught. So like you said, we picked up on those things, whether it was a piece of class or a curriculum or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my high school music teacher was the one that convinced, my parents to buy me this at the time, which was 90s, early 90s, $1,200 Roland U20. I mean, it's like, if he really wants to do, music and stuff, he needs something that's a tool that's gonna do what he needs. I mean, and which was really, really, really super cool. But yeah, that's why I absolutely admire what you're doing, Scott. Like, and then you're kind of how you described how you approached that. It's really cool. I mean, I kind of want to be back in grade school or high school or whatever.
You'd pick something up for sure.
Yeah.
We're free to join us anytime.
All right. Don't be surprised if I show up.
Google Maps. It's a valuable tool.
Sir.
And other navigation services.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited to I'm excited to share this with you guys. I know the quality won't be so great on the phone, but listeners, you get the best quality. I'll put in the good one for you. But this is Inheritance of Parallels.
So this is just one tag, no overdubs.
Yep.
We're using a click.
It's just the LFO on the amp. It's simple. I mean, there's nothing, no piece of it is fancy or complex or anything, but...
So you're just putting these chords together? Just improvising?
Yeah, just improvising, just emotion, just, oh, I like this. This is kind of, and it's kind of a, I guess the structure very loosely is something I like to do with this, where like it starts with two chords, right? It's just a suspended third, and it resolves. And as the piece progresses, the chord progression gets built out, but then repeated. It's like you're adding a chord each time, right? So the progression's getting longer. But it wasn't like written. It's just kind of intuitive. Okay, I've got this, I don't know, 6 chords that I want to end up at. I'm going to start with 2, then I'll add the 3rd, repeat, add the 4th, repeat. And the way the bass comes in and out and interplays with that. So it's just kind of one idea, really, right? Like it's a chord progression at heart. But how you get into it and how you shape feeling while you're in it. And all very intuitive. I mean, this was not a thinky project at all. This project was really about the interaction between me and the sound and the instrument. And that's why, Scott, it's so perfect that you were able, 10 minutes before we started recording to join us tonight, because I feel like that's an area, that's something, I don't know if you'd put it in those words, but that's something I've always admired about you in our collaborations. I mean, you tend to be the improviser. I tend to be in my head more with the plan. And the experience of making this record put me in a very different headspace, and one that I imagine is closer to one that you access more regularly with the, playing a sax solo or whatever. And it was really fun to step into that. I felt like I was stepping into that world for the first time, really.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a hard, the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. But some of the best advice I have is I've had to just keep your ears open, right? Because you just, you want to be, I want to accomplish this, or I want to do this kind of cool move and maneuver, or like trick, and like, but if you're kind of responding to what you're hearing, or like you said, intuitive, response, then it does kind of pop out in a more natural way, which, I mean, you definitely hear in this, and natural, not only like in the like vocabulary, but also like natural, like it kind of feels like a gaze to me, like maybe a sunset, or like watching the tide come in and out, just like a long gaze, very comfortable, at ease in the present, not in a hurry, get that solid pacing to the whole experience is
Well, then generally, being comfortable with silence is I think very important, and not have to feel like you have to fill up the space, and just, and I mean, that's kind of what I'm feeling now. It's just like you have this, you have a tone, it's there, it fades out, there's, it's kind of like a breathing thing.
Yeah.
But I like the tide analogy as well.
Nate, and I mean, both of you, one kind of quirk of the AX60, you have to, because of the patch memory and how it saves the patches, you have to move a control quite a bit to get it to start responding live, right? So it's not a good like tweakable synth where you're like moving sliders around slightly as you perform. It really is a preset synth where you design your patch. Mm-hmm. Maybe you pick one parameter that you're going to adjust live, and then you play it and perform it without probably changing a lot of stuff, because it will jump. If I decide all of a sudden, if the filter cutoff frequency is not the last thing I touched and I'm playing, and I decide I want to adjust the filter cutoff frequency, I've got to move that slider like 20% of its whole travel to get the memory to realize like, oh, you're changing filter cutoff, and then it will jump to the current level. So it's not smooth to be like tweaking as you play. It's you set it up, you save it, and then you perform, and maybe you have one thing that you're set up with live. Okay, I'm going to tell the memory by jiggling the slider. Okay, this is going to be my one parameter I'm adjusting as I play.
And you can't. There's no option to change the way that it reacts to your adjustments of those parameters.
No, there's not like a manual mode or anything. That'd be awesome. There is alternative, like third-party firmware that can adjust that parameter. And I've thought about loading it on, and maybe now that the record's out, I will. That makes it a little more responsive.
Well, instead of jumping straight there. Nice to meet you, Scott.
Yes.
Take care, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Fun stuff.
Thanks for jumping on.
Good to talk to you. Yeah, man.
Yep. Peace.
Sorry, you were asking something, Nate. I'm so glad Scott could come on, though.
Oh yeah, that's great. And that kind of it's kind of cool that he did, because my friend David, I think, would be a real good guest, just as an educator.
Oh yeah, they'd be great together. Of course.
Of
course.
Anyway, back to that. So let's say the Prophet has, in their global settings, where you can adjust the behavior of the knobs. Like you can have the knobs be, if what you're changing is, one's a way, to the left, one's way to the right. You can kind of just sort of balance those so it doesn't have such abrupt change. And some, those settings can be good and bad. So you kind of have to figure out like what you're wanting to do with your patch and what parameters are going to be, important to it, and then figure out if it sounds better, gradually going in, if it's okay to just kind of take it and twist it from where it is to where you want it. But that synth in particular just has that one, or you just that's the way it behaves. There's no besides that firmware you said way to change.
Without loading some kind of alternative firmware, that's just the way it is. And I mean, they did it that way so that like to help the memory, to help like small accidental movements not
affect
trigger the memory.
Yeah.
But they kind of maybe went a little overboard with, or were just conservative with like how much you could allow that to work. But yeah, wow, that's a lot of synthesizer music. Listeners, there's even more on Bandcamp, so you can pick up the full version of Continuing Worlds, all 3 hours and 40 odd minutes on Bandcamp. You can also get selections from Continuing Worlds, the 60 odd minute playlist version we've listened to these past 2 weeks. Also on Bandcamp, if you'd like that, or now on all your major streaming platforms, nightmode.bandcamp.com. We have been the Long Play Listening Party, and it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Nate, any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I'm looking forward to some of the shows that we have been trying to put together, because I think some really cool records, and there's always going to be more cool records than you have time for. But I think I'm ready for the next one.
Awesome. I am too. And listeners, we will see you there. It's been the Long Play Listening Party. Later. We did the thing.
We did it.